Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. I hope you're all very well on this Monday morning. Lovely to see you all. Last day of March. My goodness me, clocks went forward yesterday, so hopefully you're on the right schedule. It's 10 a.m. now. Lovely, just letting a few more people in the room. If you can keep yourselves on mute throughout the session, there is a chat box in the bottom for questions. I'm sure we can do some questions and answers at the end. We have our very special guest with us, Carolyn Sweeney from King Connect. All around, here we go. Mastering price increases and salon efficiency. Carolyn, over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for inviting me. Lovely to see some familiar faces and names and some new people that I haven't met before. So I'm going to just crack on, and yeah, there's definitely an opportunity to ask questions at the end. So for people that don't know me, my name's Carolyn Sweeney, and I'm from King Connect Coaching, and I'm also a salon owner of Creations. And I've been in the hairdressing industry for 40 years and been a hairstylist for 40 years. And I am still a hairstylist, so I'm still there on the shop floor. I just do one day a week, and I love being a stylist because it keeps me part of the team. It keeps me there. It keeps me when I'm teaching stylists or salon owners. I'm still on the shop floor. I'm still have those same challenges as a stylist. But being a stylist, what you know is it's all about yourself. So it's all about me growing my column within a team, and then becoming a salon manager. 35 years ago, I went into management. You kind of change your focus. So for all the managers that are on the call, it's all you look at yourself as a stylist, but then you have to start looking at everybody else and making sure that they're achieving their goals and their targets. And it's that transition from being a salon owner then into the salon owner, which I did 27 years ago. And of course, being a salon owner, all of a sudden you've got the responsibilities of all the finances, and just making sure that everybody ticks and everybody earns what they want to earn and what they need to look at. But of course, it's become very challenging, and it's going to be a challenging year. There's no doubt about it. I went into coaching 20 years ago. So first started coaching through 365 education, worked for many other companies, L'Oreal, Redken, and then decided to 7 years ago set up on my own, partly because I felt I needed a club. I needed somewhere for myself to be with like-minded people and business owners. So I run a club for business owners, and it's all around managing and growing and developing the business. And I teach from the heart. So I teach from the success of my own businesses and the challenges that we face. So today is going to be very quick. I'm just going to be giving a lot of information in a very small space of time. So I'm going to be speaking quite quickly. This is recorded, so you can go back to it if there's any points you want to go back to. Appreciate just everybody staying muted today. It just makes it really easy, and we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, an opportunity to ask any questions or perhaps pop them in the chat box. So we've got them at the end. If not, you can always contact us afterwards if you've got any questions. So the objective of this quick time we're spending together is the importance of strategic pricing and getting it right for salon growth, maximizing the time in the salon to optimize all of your team, better salon utilization, and managing time in the salon, increasing effective profitability. And that's where our industry is struggling in profit. So we've got to find ways to make more profit. And so this year's focus for King Connect is all about the 3 P's: getting the product right, getting the price right, and getting the pay, keeping people in our industry. So today we're looking at those 3 P areas for pricing and productivity. And you've got to get your product right to be able to push the prices to where we need to be them. And then we need to get our price right to be able to pay people what they truly deserve. And this goes all the way through our program for this year. So it's the chicken and egg situation, isn't it? So we have to charge the right prices to pay the right salaries. And today we've got to charge the right prices to pay all the bills that we need. And for sure, it's challenging times financially. And so it's looking at that pricing and the utilization, because there's many people not utilized in our industry. And we are in troubled waters. So it's a case of the strong are going to survive, but we need to look at those fundamental parts of our business to make sure that we're there and ready for the storms that are ahead of us. So there isn't a wrong and right way to pricing. That's truly what's important. So it's important of looking at where your business is right now. So what's important to you? So what are the important things that we need to think about when we're looking at our strategy of pricing? So firstly, we need to make sure that all of our costs are covered. So we need to start looking at where our costs are. We need to make sure we are making profits. We need to add that profit margin onto what our costs are already. And of course, pay your team the right amount to stay in our business. So we want to encourage people to stay in employment, or if you're running a hybrid salon, keeping people in your business rather than perhaps going somewhere else. And planning those increases as costs change. And so it's not about one price once a year anymore. So why that doesn't work, and our industry, when we look backwards, what we used to do worked, but what we've got to do is we've got to start looking forward. So what we used to do may not work anymore. And so why increasing our prices once a year is no longer really working. So for 2025, what people should have done was looked at their normal price increase if you do it once a year. It's different if you already look at your prices all the way through the year. So what people doing once a year increases would have looked at their normal price for normal inflation, and then would have had to do an additional price increase for the new tax burden from the autumn budget. So the challenge for the hair and the beauty industry is a lot to do with we haven't kept up with prices. And so why have we stayed so low? So again, it's looking backwards to say, what do we need to change to look forward? Well, one of the reasons is, of course, about cascade effect. And what the cascade effect is that many people that open their salons, and this has been historical, happened over many, many years, is as somebody opens a new salon, breaks away from the salon they work in, open a new salon, make it all beautiful and lovely, and say, how am I going to get people? Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to perhaps put my prices just slightly below the most expensive salon in town, or slightly below the average price in our town. And so what that's done historically is just pushed prices down, and still goes on today. And the same thing, it just continually pushes the prices down in our industry. And the same thing's happening with people moving from to self-employed. They go self-employed, and what they do is they bring their price down because they think that's going to increase their client numbers. And of course, we've got the unfair tax burden between the employed and the self-employed, which again is just continually pushing our pricing down. Also, over the last 5 to 10 years, we've had new services that have been introduced, like the foilages and the balayages, or many services that have taken a lot longer. And a bit like where the industry many, many years ago moved from the 15-minute shampoo and set to the 45-minute blow dry, that price was never corrected. And so it's been a problem for many years. So still today, we have people doing much longer, more complicated colours, and perhaps not put their prices up to where they need to be. So it's a combination of all of these things that have kept our prices below where they need to be. And of course, we've got the good old fear. If I put my prices up, the customers may no longer come. But if we don't put our prices up, it won't be the fact that the customers no longer come. We may not be in business. So we need to make those considerations when we're looking at our prices. So most salon prices are set by comparison. So they look at everybody else in their town, or they look at the industry. They ask other people within the industry, what should I be charging for this particular service? And of course, the problem with this is that we have no idea what other people's overheads are. So we have no idea whether they own the business, or they don't, or they've got a mortgage, or they don't have a mortgage, or whether it's a leasehold, whether it's a freehold. We have no idea what their business is compared to ours. And just their whole business setup. So the difference between having a salon working owner that's in the salon full time, producing an income, versus a salon that's got a management team looking after the business as opposed to a working owner. So that different setup would make a massive difference between the costs within the business. So again, just comparing, you can't compare apples for apples when you're looking at maybe apples versus pears. So, you can't just go, what's everybody else charging, to look at what we're doing. And of course, we can't compare with somebody that's not paying VAT. And so also we should not try to. We should not try and compete with that, because we cannot beat somebody that's charging 20% less than ourselves. So we should set our prices up for our business, and that's what we should be looking at. What is our business costs? And what do we do to make ourselves different so people visit our business rather than somebody else's. And we need to be different and better than the others. And that's what it's about. So we need to think about what is it that our business is doing and what's unique and different about us that demands that higher price. And when you look at other industries, you don't pay the same price for a burger in different buildings. So the restaurant industry has lots of similarities to the hairdressing industry. It's not quite one-on-one, but it does have a similar model, because if you go to obviously McDonald's, it's all about the quantity. They have to produce a lot of burgers, a lot of fries, very, very quickly to get their profit margins there, versus a restaurant where they've got to charge a lot more because they're going to not sell as many burgers. But of course, that's by experience. Now, two different people buying for two different reasons. And so we need to look at our industry. And many people will say to me when I talk about this, well, it's a haircut versus a haircut. Of course it is, but it's about experience. And what we sell is, of course, time. And it's how we proportion that time and making sure that our pricing is right for the time that we spend. But of course, what we also need is we need to decide what market we are in. Are we in the fast market? Bang them in, bang them out, or are we in the luxury market of the experience and how somebody feels better, for that experience? So, is it quality versus experience? What are we looking at? And then that's when a price matters. This, of course, has very many variants. There's many variants involved all the time. So we have to look at those variants versus whether it be time or whether it be cost. Our industry also books out different time for exactly the same service. So you could be in a salon that spends 45 minutes and charges for 45 minutes for a cut and finish, and you could be next door to a salon that's giving 1 hour. So there's also a 15-minute difference. And certainly in our salon, we have different people that charge for different times. We have stylists that work at 45 minutes, and we have stylists that work at an hour, because different people do work in different ways. So we need to consider that when we're setting our pricing. Again, like I said at the beginning, there isn't a wrong or a right when you come to it. So other areas that you need to focus on when creating more income. So what other things can you do that look at that income, not just on time and price? So underutilized team members can make a massive difference to your business. Stretched appointments without increased prices. So if you've got somebody in your salon that stretches them and doesn't understand that when they're looking at that amount of money and how much difference that makes. So we need to become better managers. So we look at that stretched appointment and look at where people are doing it and why they're doing it. And so how do we adjust our prices to those things? Booking out longer for services that are needed. So for instance, if you're a particularly fast person working and you've got regular customers that you've been looking after for a long amount of time, it might be that somebody in your business may need 45 minutes for, like, say, a retouch, and somebody else might only need 20 minutes for that service. So how do you get that right? Because we can actually make more money if we're working on a service a bit quicker. So rather than looking at price per time, it's what areas can we perhaps increase the amount we charge for lesser time. So incorrect charging for services where somebody books in for, say, a half head of highlights, but someone puts in more highlights. So again, this is about managing the team to make sure that they're getting their pricing right. And we find that if the team understand the pricing better, they tend to understand their wages better. If they understand their pricing better, they can then make sure that they get their pricing correctly there. So it also comes to poor management of appointments. So I really think this is a training need within salons. And then we have the new stylists taking too long to get to grow the clientele. So historically, we've allowed stylists to take quite a long time to go from perhaps an apprenticeship to a full stylist. And historically, some salons have taken up to 2 years for that to get there. Well, of course, with employment costs today, we can't do that. And so looking at a stylist that needs to get there quickly, do you have a really good strategy to get somebody from no clients to many clients, and to have them a large enough clientele to make sure that they can cover their costs? So we need to change their mindsets or our mindsets to be able to act much quicker and faster. So can we get somebody fully utilised in 3 to 6 months? And of course, the answer is yes. We just need to put that marketing strategy and that mindset in place. So great tools that we have, and of course with Salon IQ, there is tools for everything, which is why I love working with them so much. And their utilisation charts are brilliant for two things. One, of course, marketing. So this is a utilization picture of a whole week. And so this is, you can see quite obviously at the beginning of the week, we've got 25% white space, 26% white space. So our Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is where we need to focus on utilization through the salon. Not so much for the weekend. We might be looking at how we could have any cancellation processes in place just in case anyone cancels to keep that fill. But then from a marketing perspective, could we look at the beginning of the week to see how we could fill some of those appointments? And so as such a brilliant tool, because it's not just about getting our pricing right, it's about getting our utilization right. And of course, we've got the ability to click through to look at each day individually. So here we can see that we've got one particular stylist on one particular day that's got a 42% white space. So what could we do with that white space? So are we going to look at some marketing tactics to fill somebody, or if not, what else would that person do with that white space? Is it education? Is it themselves looking at their own social media to see how they can fill that space for one day? So let's make sure we really use the tools that we've got there to help us utilize our days and fill our stylists up. So let's now look at that pricing strategy. Pricing a service is, of course, much trickier than pricing a product. Getting it right is about valuing your time, your expertise, and weighing up that customer perception of what you charge. Asking people to pay too much, and they might stop buying. But asking them, but they have to feel valued. So you must make sure that it's that value. I don't believe in discounting in salon unless you're particularly got a strategy to grow somebody. But you've got to get that value right. So it comes back to that experience. Ask too little, and of course, there's many salons today that are in this situation where they're not charging enough for the services that we're providing. And of course, that means that there's no profit there. So pricing is both complex and complicated. If something is complex, it means that there are many components, and complexity does not always mean difficult. But of course, why it's difficult for us is because we have many different levels. So we have, say a graduate stylist maybe up to 8 different price brackets within a cut and finish price. We also have different people charging different times and people doing different services. But if something is complicated, it refers to that high level of difficulty. So is it difficult to set our prices, or do we make it difficult? So do we make it complex, and do we think too hard about it? So what strategy we have to make it less complicated for ourselves? There's 2 basic pricing models to work from. One, of course, is cost plus pricing, which involves adding a markup to your break-even cost. So it can be very difficult in our industry because, of course, that will depend on the number of stylists at any one time and many of those different variants that we've already talked about. And of course, we have what we call value-based pricing. And this considers the value of the service to your customers. So where do they see that perceived value? It reflects on what actually the customer is willing to be prepared to pay. You can charge more if you've built up a loyal customer, offering a higher quality of service, or seem to be better than your rivals. So, of course, this one is really important to us, is the value-based pricing. But we do need to look at both. So value-based pricing works really well for us with the different levels of expertise that we have. As long as you've looked at your break-even and make sure that everything is covered from that basic level. Cost plus pricing, of course, we need to consider when we're working with services that have more expense to them. So hair extensions, perhaps fabric, and beauty service, particularly with the equipment hire. But you can also charge more for an expert service, like a textured service, a straightening service, or perhaps somebody that's an expert in just today cutting short hair, because we know that that's a skill that people have less in today. So we can charge more for one particular area or one particular stylist that is an expert in that area. So that's why we need to consider both. It's very difficult to just look at one area. So I think we need to look at our pricing in much more depth, and even to the fact today, rather than having 1 to 4 level or 1 to 8 level, I think we need to start looking at each stylist as an individual and what should they charge for each service individually. So we need to have that mix of both. There are many reasons why you might need to review your servicing pricing right now. So it might be that you're not making a profit. If you're not making a profit, of course, your pricing must go up. Your overheads have increased as they do every year. And of course, we've got the wage increase, the employer's NI, and the rates that go up from tomorrow. You need to find expansion in your business. So whether you're growing your business into 1 or 2 salons, or just the fact that you're growing your team. And of course, what we know is you could be in profit with the level of team members that you have right now. And to employ one person could take you out of profit, but how quickly would you need that person to take the minimum they need to make to put you back into profit? So of course, that's an investment in extra team members. Your team may have received an official accreditation, so they may have been on a cutting course, a texture course, anything that has made their skill higher. The minute we've invested in somebody, we've put a cost into education, we should be covering that cost by charging more. Any specialist services, anybody that's an expert in something, but don't always need more time. So just because someone doesn't need more time doesn't mean to say we can't charge more for that time in certain areas of the business. Obviously, we need to promote stylists through promotional criteria. And whatever the reason, everyone needs to put their prices up. But of course, fear stops us increasing our prices, and we need to move away from being worried and make sure we've got a strategy in place that we continually look at our prices through the year. So let's start with looking at calculating your costs. So you need to understand what it costs you to provide the service. So this is looking at cost-based pricing. Even though that's not what I necessarily recommend, I still think we need to know where we are. So you need to know what your break even for your salon is. Then you'll need to decide to what extent these costs will reflect in your pricing. So as long as you're breaking even, then you look at what areas you can bring more money in to create that profit. So your break even looks at your fixed costs first, and of course your fixed costs is where it makes no difference whether you've got 50 people in your salon or you've got 150 people. So things like your rent, your electric, your certain costs that will make absolutely no difference to how many people walk in the door. And then we have those direct costs, which depends on how many customers walk through the door. For example, pay. If you've got people that are commission paid, that will go up the more they take. And of course, the more colours you do, the more your cost goes up. And your laundry costs, particularly now, most of us now use disposable towels. So what extent do those affect your business? So start by calculating your costs. At King Connect, we have a break-even sheet. It's really simple to use to very quickly look at what your break-even number is. So to get that information, go to your cash flow forecast. Perhaps your bookkeeper could help you, your end of year accounts, and of course you can come to us if you need us to help you with that. So what you need to remember is once you've worked out your break even, that does not mean that everything is profit, as your fixed and direct costs are covered at that time, but your direct costs will vary every time you see a client after that. So it's a proportion of the number over your break even that becomes profit. This is why cost plus pricing is difficult, because this involves adding a markup to your break even and depends on the number of stylists and how each stylist is utilised at any one time. You need to know your break even so you can know the minimum amount of stylists that you can have and charge to cover all of your costs. So does the size of your team work? And that's a question that you need to be asking yourself to cover the costs. Is every stylist taking what you need them to take? And what is the minimum everyone should take? So you need to make sure you set that minimum target for everyone in your business. And that minimum target should be evaluated to what the break even is in your salon, so that then the targets that you'll set your team above that minimum can then look at where you start to make the profit and can start to pay people more money within your team. As I said before, taking on a new stylist could be the difference between making a profit and not. So we need to understand those wage costs. Planning from your cash flow is essential, and then a marketing plan to get that stylist there as quick as possible. And this is no different from an underperforming stylist. If you've got somebody under that minimum performance or that minimum number that you need them to take, how quickly can you get them or manage them in or out of your business? And then again, if you've got a graduate stylist, how quickly can you get them and what's that cost your business until you can get them there? And so again, at King Connect, we have a management and team commission pivot point tracking sheet that helps us look at where each stylist is, what their target is, and making sure we're looking at our CPP, our commission pivot point for every stylist, and does that match our break even? So we have tools that help us look at where each area of our business is and that they link together so that we make sure our businesses are breaking even and ready to make profit. So let's look at price calculators. Price calculators, and there's many of them on the market, and there's many of them out there, but they are just quite a simple calculation. A price calculator works out what your price is per minute. But like I say, you've got to make sure that you're covering price per minute, but there's so many variants. This is good to know, but not how I would set perhaps all of my pricing up. So working out your price per minute includes all of your costs. Like I said, this can be complicated because of the variance of utilization. So this is based on your break even, the number of stylists you have at any one time, the hours each stylist works, stylist utilization. But I think this is a really good starting point. So I would recommend that you work this out, but that I would recommend you then look at all of the variants that you can add to it afterwards. But remember, this never stays the same. If somebody leaves or joins your business, this number will change. Good starting point. So let's look at how a calculator works. It's very simple. You start with your salon break even per week. So that number goes in. Then you decide what the profit margin is that you're trying to reach. So for this example, we've got a break even of £5,000. And then we've got a profit margin of 15%. That's what we're looking to make. So the profit would be £750. So then your total service to break even now is target of 5,750 as a break even. The hours available per week, so you just add up the hours that people are working each week, which is 128 in this example. Remember, you need to calculate that with a proportion of holiday time taken out as well. The average salon utilization. So of course you can look at Salon IQ and find out what your utilization is there. So then you take your team hours available per week, then you multiply that because you're only available 75% of the time in this example. So that changes from 128 hours available to 96 hours available. So then you would make the calculation of what is my total per hour. So the total services to break even and profit, which is 5,750, divide by the team hours available per week at 75% utilization. So this works out at total per hour of £60. So of course, price per minute in this example would work out at £1 per minute. So this is a really good place to start. But of course, we've got to then consider what services take longer and what services are expertise, or of course, what services can we charge per minute but do a bit quicker. Okay, so all of those things need to be taken into consideration. So it's a really good place, really good starting point, and I would recommend that you looked at it. But you can't compare your prices with another salon or stylist for the simple differences. A cut and finish price in one salon, 45 minutes. A cut and finish price in another salon, 60 minutes. So if each salon was charging £60, one would be charging £1.33 per minute and the other would be charging £1 per minute. So this needs to be considered. And so if you've got somebody in your salon that is a slower worker, but really good because they do really thorough consultations, a really high level of experience, and but you need to be looking at then per minute, surely you should be charging more than somebody charging the 45 minutes. So sometimes we want to charge more because we're perhaps quicker or an expert. So then we need to look at it from the other perspective. So we worked out what our costs are, and we've worked out where we want to break even and what everybody's target is. But then perhaps we need to look at it from the other angle. So what do your stylists want to earn? So charging the right price for the best wages. So we're looking at it at a very different angle. As long as your business is in break even, you can start to play with, well, how can I get somebody to earn more money within my salon? So let's take this as an example. And we're not very good at talking salaries in our industry, but I think we need to start making people understand what their salaries are. And on our dynamic stylist and stylist course, we always try to get our teams to understand what their salary is, rather than focusing just on their hourly rate. So when we look at an annual salary, living wage at the moment is just under 24,000. The UK average is around 34,000. And then we try to look at whatever the goal might be. So in this example, we're looking at 50,000 because there's absolutely no reason a stylist couldn't be earning that today in our salons. So let's take a 35.5-hour week, which is a full-time stylist week. So what we can see here is on living wage, they would be on just over 450 per week. The UK average is just over 650 per week. But what our goal is, we want to get to people just under that 1,000, or looking to get somebody into earning £1,000 gross per week. So when we look at that in pay per hour, often stylists don't understand. So this is another area I think is really important, because the current national minimum wage is £12.21. What we've got to do is make sure that people in our teams are definitely earning the UK average. So we want to make sure that they're earning £17.50 per hour, and then making sure our goal is at £26 per hour. But when you look at the salaries you're paying, I'm sure many of you are already hitting the average, and also have stylists hitting our goal that we're looking for. Now, but what's important is making sure that your teams do understand, because often I'll talk to stylists and they'll tell me that they're on minimum wage of £12.21. But when we actually look at their salary, they're already easily at that average. And once we know where they are, we can start helping them set goals to be where they want to be. So let's take, what would they need to take? What's the service they'd need to take? I have both a net and a gross figure here, because salons work in both different ways. And what's the most common pay in our industry? It's around 35% of services. And so this is what we call the commission pivot point, the CPP, the point that somebody moves from their guaranteed pay into their commission rate. So we want to make sure our stylists truly understand at what point they go from being paid their guaranteed pay or starting to be able to earn more. So in this instance, the target would be, let's just talk gross, just under 16,000 per week. The UK average would be 2.2. We know that there's stylists doing that out there, many stylists. So how do we get our stylists for their service total to be around 3,000 or above, to get them to that goal salary? And that's what we need to start talking to our stylists about. How do we get them there? Well, if we take an average of 25 customers per week, and of course you can play with these numbers yourself and look at what the average of each of your stylists are doing right now. And of course, you've got, this depends on every client, because you might have somebody that's an extension stylist. They might only do 1 or 2 customers per week, but their average bill is very high. So this varies for every single stylist in your salon. What this would look at is, what would their gross average bill need to be? So the living wage, if they were doing 25 clients, their average bill would need to be 63. 90 at the UK average, and then 132. And again, when you look at these numbers, you know that you're already achieving some of these higher numbers. So the focus is, how do we get our stylists from the 63 average bill up to the 132 average bill? Again, that's worked on 25. So you need to look at what those calculations are for your salon. So it's starting to set your stylist targets at what their minimum is, and then what is their goal. And then I would start to set it at what would be their full potential if they were fully booked all of the time, to set that as where they need to be focused at. So let's look at that goal setting again. So each stylist should have a minimum And we would call that the commission pivot point. This is the point that they go from their guaranteed pay into the ability, depending on what your commission target is, the ability to earn more. What's that number? Each stylist needs to know that number. What's their motivational target? The one where perhaps they can promote to the next pay level. So maybe their cut and finish is 55. How do they get from 55 to 60, 65 to 70? Or it might be the level or the pay target, the example that we looked at just now. So how do we set those pay targets with them? And then the aspirational goal, we always set at their full potential. What would they be taking if they were fully booked 100% of the time? And that just shows them where their possibilities are from their commission pivot point to the full potential. And then, of course, we promote them so that those targets continually go up to stretch them to their pay targets. At King Connect, we have a really easy potential income. And here you can see the difference if you've got a stylist working at 60 minutes, so 37.5 hours times 60 minutes. And we've used an example of £68. So this potential stylist could take, if they were fully booked, 2,550 in a week. And I think it's a really good example to show stylists in time. So if we change that time just by 45 minutes, still the same time, still the same price, look how different that is. 3,400 for 45 minutes for a cut and finish versus 2,550. This is a really helpful tool to help somebody realize how time and money is important. See that? 2,500 to 3,400. We really need to educate our stylists. I'm not saying everybody needs to run around and work really, really quickly. It's about quick workers, slower workers, and getting the price right for the time that they're doing. I absolutely love the dashboard at Salon IQ. It's one of my favorite tools for setting targets. And it's about the stars and the flags. And if you don't use this, please go on the Q&A and look how to use this. It's just the best tool ever. You set your minimum performance, which shows you where the red paddle is here. So for this particular stylist, we've got a client count that's minimum is 20 and their goal is 25. And then you can see the service total here. Minimum is 16, maximum is 2,000. So we can see here the targets have been set. There's 3 green, so they've got 3 green, they've got 3 stars, and then you've got 1 red, which is a retail target here. The retail target is 160 as minimum. Where we're trying to get them to is 300. Unfortunately, they fell below, so you can see it's red, so a red flag still shows. And how it works is at the beginning of the week, you would have all 6 red flags showing. And then as the week progressed, you would see that the red flags drop off. At some point, you might have no red flags, and then you might have the orange, which means that you've gone above your minimum, but you've not quite hit your target yet, and the flags hit once you get the target. It's a fantastic tool. You can have up to 6 KPIs, and you can change these. It's all to do with the global settings, but go to the Q&A if you don't already use this. Brilliant motivation tool, brilliant way to get your teams fully utilized. So that helps our profitability within the business. So if you haven't already, and tomorrow is the day, we've been talking about this since October. You've got your 3 new expenses due to start tomorrow. So we've got rate reform, we've got wage increase, and we've got the employer's NI, all 3 going up as from April the 1st. So here's just a very quick example. So this salon's example, the rates reform is a 5,000 increase. The minimum wage, new wage going in is for anybody that was on minimum wage was another 5,000 increase. And the biggest one, the killer for us, is the employees NI is 20,000 increase. So for this salon example, they need to find an extra additional 30,000 this year and for the foreseeable future. So where do we find that extra 30,000 from? Well, if you start to break that down, it makes it better in bite sizes. So if you divide that by 52 weeks, this particular salon would need to find £600 more per week, which with an average of, say, 200 clients, that works out at £3 per client more. So when you break it down, so the first thing, if you haven't already done it, and you must do it, work out what that extra cost is. And again, we can help you with that if you need help. divide it by the amount of clients that you're seeing, and then look at that price that you need to make sure we need to find per customers. However, when prices go up, remember your direct costs go up too. So you'll need to look at what other increases you'll get by your price increase. Any price increase your costs, because your VAT will go up, your wages will go up, your employees' NI will go up, and so will your pensions. So of course, what we know is if it's £3 per client we need, that's quite simply not enough. So if your average price per client needs to go up by £3, we would recommend doubling that number. Obviously, this number is going to be different for every single salon. And remember, this is only part of what you need to put your prices up by, because you'd have had your natural inflation that you need to increase by as well. So this is why we look at different times in the year that your costs go up. So this was another example. Someone came to me in January to say that their supplier had put their price up on their colour by 2.2%. So we asked, what was your spend? The spend was 35,000 per year. The increase is £770 per year. Break that down, it's a £15 per week increase. And sometimes what happens is people look at just a £15 increase and they decide to absorb it, but you can't, because these are going on all of the times, these small increases. So if you've got a £15 per week increase, again, you'd look at what were your average colours, colour clients per week. In this salon example, it was 45. So that worked out at 33 pence per service more. So the simple thing that they needed to do in January was look at that one cost and say, it's going to cost me 33 pence per customer per colour. So what else affects those prices? And we need to know that the VAT, the wages, the NI, and the pensions, of course, will go up with that increase. So how much would you put your colours up? If that was what was happening in January, I would have gone 66 pence. But of course, we would perhaps go, let's round that up to £1 per colour. So here's your example of, we need to look at if something goes up. So if your colours went up in January, you could make those costs go up. And then in April, and then of course, if something else starts to go up during the year, you look at these things at different times in the year. So how often should we be putting our prices up? Just once a year work anymore? Probably not. So it's any time you have any increases in costs. And then for stylists, if their wage goes up, of course, their tax costs go up. We can use promotions for them to get them through those different levels. Any education expertise, so we can put their prices up through that. And of course, if we've got a stylist in demand. So we need to look at any costs that go up and looking at any of those areas for stylists, because we're going to pay them more, we need to be charging more. So like I said at the very beginning, there isn't a wrong or a right. You need to make sure you cover all of your normal yearly inflation costs. Your April burden, your new burden in April, your pay rises. We recommend that you do a minimum of 2 price increases a year. But we like to take a look every 12 weeks and make price adjustments or on different services. So we tend to, instead of having once a year price increase, this means that if we put perhaps our colour and cuts up at the beginning of the year, our cuts up at the beginning of the year, and then maybe our colour prices in April. So actually we do it around the other way. When our suppliers put our prices up in January, we always have a January increase to cover our prices. And then in April, we put our prices up again because of any new tax burdens. And then through the year, you're going to perhaps adjust different services, looking at different areas so that our customers don't see it all going up in one place. But of course, at the moment, if you're only working on one increase a year, please make sure that you look at all of those costs. Many of you already do increases through the year, but if you've only done one a year, you need to be having some larger price increases. And of course, this is the time to do it because everybody understands, everybody's watching the news and knows that prices are going to be going up as from this month. So it's a great time to adjust your prices. If you haven't already, it needs to be done right now. So here's the checklist of what we talked about this morning. Act now on your price increases for April. Revisit again in July and October as your new strategy for pricing. Manage your team's utilisation at any white space. Manage teams' bookings, timing and prices. We need to manage that, monitor it. Look at anyone that needs a promotion within your team. Make sure that your team has targets, minimum target, a target to get to, and a full potential target. Focus on the customer experience. So you're looking at all of those 3 Ps: product, price, and pay. So that's the important checklist. And if you need any help, please don't hesitate to contact us. So take a quick snapshot of that checklist that we've done from this morning. We constantly have courses. Our next course that we're running is Connected to Clients, which is looking at that product, making sure we're really looking at getting that product right. That's on the 19th of May. And we also delve very much into management of utilisation. Of course, we need to grow our customers, so we also have social media courses running throughout the year. Our next one is on the 24th, which is in Manchester. If you want to look at any of our courses, there's a full calendar on King Connect. And simply, if you'd like to talk to us, we have what we call a discovery call, which Salon IQ will be very happy to give you your contact details. If you've got any challenges in your business, you want to talk about anything, please contact us. So that was a very quick 46 minutes of education, flying along, very quick. Over to you, Sam. And has anyone got any questions? And if they have got any questions they want to ask now, or they want to contact us afterwards, please feel free to.
Carolyn, as always, full of so much information. I've taken pages of notes. Very, very informative. So many calculations and tools and resources that we can use. Got a comment here from Sarah at Bodhi Tree Spa, just saying no questions, but that was super helpful. Thank you. Something here from Sarah again. Her accountants recommended an increase once a quarter.
Yeah.
Just so the prices go up gradually as opposed to one big price increase.
Yeah, I think we all need to work on that, and that needs to be the strategy moving forward. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, great. But for what I can see, we've got no questions coming through. It has been recorded. We will be sending this out to you either this evening or first thing tomorrow morning. Carolyn, thank you so much for your time. If
Pleasure.
anyone has any questions at all, please do reach out to Carolyn or Em. They'll be more than happy to help you and answer those questions. Thank you so much, Harry, for joining. Really great to see you. Some familiar faces there. Carl, Helen, lovely. Yeah, thank you so much. Excellent, Carolyn. We're all good.
Super, lovely. Thanks very much. Anyone
Take
wants
care.
to just give me contact. Okay,
Thank you
take care.
so much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.